My name is Dakota Wagner. I'm the Southeast Program Manager with the Forest Stewards Guild. And tonight we are talking about keeping forests as forests, tax programs, and other incentives for the Georgia landowner. We're talking about the Forest Legacy Program, tax incentives, carbon markets, and then conservation easements. And I'll let each presenter and speaker introduce themselves at the beginning. And I'll be monitoring the chat box. If anyone has questions, please feel free to type them in at any time. I will save them, and then we have some time at the end for kind of a Q&A panel. But don't be afraid to just type them into the chat box as we go, because I don't want you to forget them. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so please make sure that you keep your microphone muted if you're not the main presenter speaking at that time, just so we give them the whole floor and there's no interference. All right, so without further ado, Kenny, I will hand it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Dakota. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenny Colson. I work with the, oh, my slides are not advancing, and they did a while ago. Okay. Anyway, while I'm working out my little technical difficulties, my name is Kenny Colson, and I'll be right back in a second. Don't we love technology?
I was gonna say, I feel like this always happens.
This worked great while ago.
Did like 5 minutes ago.
Yes. All right. Let's see here. Here we go.
Great, awesome.
All right. That's not sharing though, is it?
No, I'm not seeing a
Okay,
screen.
hang on. We gotta love this wonderful technology. Okay, here we go. I think I'm getting there now. If it will let me share. Hopefully it will. Okay, let's see if it's going. Okay, I think it's advancing now. Do
We
y'all
are
see
not
my
seeing, no, I'm not seeing a shared screen.
Ooh, okay, hold on. It says it is, but it's telling me a story.
Hmm.
Okay, hang on. There we go, I think.
Okay, yes, I am seeing it now.
Yep. Okay, y'all are seeing the screen with my name on it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. My name is Kenny Colson. I work with Department of Revenue, Local Government Services Division. I am the main instructor to all of the tax assessors across the state and tax assessor staff and tax commissioners and tax commissioner staff. In addition to being the digest manager of Property Tax Digest, I also teach all of the continuing ed classes to the tax assessors on property tax covenants. And tonight I wanted to particularly hone in on Forest Land Protection Act and also Conservation Use Tax Program. Both of them are 10-year covenants. They work real great. They reduce property taxes. An owner has to pretty much commit to 10 years of bona fide timberland ag use. The contact information is on that screen. Please don't call that Atlanta number. You'll get a robot, and a day or two later, I'll get a voice message from you. There's a cell number there. That's my Revenue Department cell phone, and it's right here in front of me right now. And if I don't answer, I'm on the other line. Leave me a message, and I'll certainly call you right back. I have a couple of email addresses on there. My main address is the DOR email address. Feel free to email me anytime you have a covenant question. I am required to let y'all know that why there we go. I have to put this disclaimer up there, and pretty much I won't read that. What it tells us is whatever I tell you tonight, some of it may be my opinion, some of my perception of the property tax law. It may or may not be an official position or policy of the Georgia Department of Revenue. Quickly, very briefly, I have been doing covenants since they began. The very first covenant series began as preferential in 1984. I was a local tax assessor down in Toombs County, and I was there for 11 years. Moved next county over to Tatma County. I was there for 9 years. From there, I relocated to Taylor County, Georgia. I was the chief tax appraiser there for 7 years. And then for the last 15 years, I've been working with the Department of Revenue. So I have been doing covenants since 1984 in some matter, shape, fashion, or form. Um, the farm covenants, the forest land covenants, they're a good tax incentive. They lower property taxes from the normal, what we call fair market value taxes, where the tax assessor values your property at its full market value. And I very much recommend or highly recommend that you would at least inquire if you don't have your property in it already. Forest land, what is forest land? The legal dictionary, the judicial system recognizes, and a lot of attorneys will reference this. It's called Black's Law. If forest land is a tract of land covered with trees and usually one of considerable extent. And what the Forest Land Protection Act does, it applies rather than the 40% fair market value that you pay taxes on like you do everything else, it applies 40% of a use tax. And the use tax is based upon the productivity of the soil, on the income stream of that soil, and all FLPA, which is the Forest Land Protection Act acronym, all FLPA soil values are used from the productivity of the dirt, according to what the soil type is, based on its site on for forestry, based on its site index of loblolly pines. We get that out of the soil publications. We use the statewide NRCS soil tables. Most county assessors now use them. And I'll give you an example of those use values later on at the end of this presentation. Let's talk about if I own property, how do I get in it? What qualifies? What disqualifies? What would help me to put my property in it? And what's the advantages? First of all, the advantages would be an average of 50 to 60% decrease in your normal property taxes from the regular rates. And again, we'll get into that kind of toward the end of the program as far as the dollar amounts. But let's look at what qualifies and what disqualifies. The Forest Land Protection Act, the property must be owned by an individual or individuals or by any entity registered to do business in this state. Now, I cannot think of any ownership that does not apply to other than an out-of-state company. And even then, if they have some kind of registration through the Georgia Secretary of State's office, they could most likely would probably qualify. This covenant, it does not, the benefits, the discount does not pass down to any kind of structures, houses, any kind of residences, any kind of shops, barns, any kind of improvements. It only works on timber land. The primary use of the property must be good faith, subsistence, or commercial production of trees, timber, wood fiber products from or on the land. Now that includes a multitude of different things. Naturally, I'm growing trees. I may want to harvest and bale and sell my pine straw. That's a forest product. That does not disqualify. I may want to put it in some kind of different programs. And the various programs I can put it in, naturally, if we have a forestry tract, most anywhere in Georgia, it can also be called a wildlife habitat. Wildlife, they would draw to a large timber tract because of the cover. That's just natural. And I think y'all are going to talk about it later on. Somebody else is going to present on it. But the carbon sequestration, if property is in any of these carbon programs, that's great. It does not disqualify it. Now, the reason the legislature chose to put this in the FLPA qualifications, they didn't want a tax assessor disqualifying it if there's any kind of funds or any kind of money available as a result of being in a carbon sequestration registry. If it's on that registry, that's okay. The purpose of us doing this is not to disqualify it. There's a minimum of 200 acres in the covenants, and they're 10-year covenants, and they must be at least 200 acres or more. You can have timberland, if you purchased it for mitigation or conservation banking, where you're restoring wetlands or other type of natural resources, that's okay. You can have the production and maintenance of ecosystem products and services. And one example of that, not limited to, would be the Clean Air and Water Act, property subject to Clean Air and Water Act. Um, very, very timber program friendly. Any of the forestry programs are okay. Um, it can also have environmentally sensitive property up on it. That's okay. And again, I'll reiterate, any Georgia forestry program, and it doesn't matter if the property owner has financial incentives, if they get any kind of money from these programs in any way, that does not disqualify it from this farm timberland covenant. The primary use, again, would be timber. It includes conservation, ecological forest management, in which commercial production of wood and wood fiber products may be undertaken primarily for conservation and restoration purposes rather than financial gain. That's a vague paragraph. And to summarize that, to paraphrase it, let me tell you what that is. That paragraph just states that a tax assessor cannot require that the owner harvest their timber. This program, the qualifying thing of this program is to grow it. That's all. All you got to do is grow it. And it has in there that it doesn't require financial gain, which means you don't have to cut the timber, you don't have to sell it. You can grow it as long as you want to grow it. It doesn't disqualify it should you decide to do timber management, thinning, clear cut, or whatever. If you do clear cut it, within a year or two, you're probably going to want to plant it back. But if you don't plant it back, it's going to regenerate. It may or may not, most likely will not be something that you really, really desire. You're going to get a lot of scrub oaks and hardwood in it, depending on what part of the state you're in. But that still qualifies as a woodland as far as the property tax covenant. And again, I'm very limited due to our time, so I'm kind of running through this kind of quick. There's another conservation program that has farmland in it along with timberland. It runs parallel with this. The uses are very similar, and your local tax assessor can really explain to you more which program may or may not be better for you, what would be best. I will tell you this: the Forest Land Protection Act is probably, if you have a mixture of land, of ag land, pasture land, along with timberland, and I won't really call it timberland. It don't have to be planted pines. It can be woodland if it has any kind of woods on it, trees on it. The all land qualifies as timberland for the conservation valuation side. In other words, for the conservation FLPA discount, if half of it's in trees, then we're calling all of the land forest land for valuation purposes. An example, I have 300 acres, 100 acres of it's in pasture, 200 acres of it in trees. Over half of my total tract's in trees, so it all qualifies for FLPA, but all 300 acres gets the FLPA use value as if all of it was in trees, which is cheaper. It's a lower value. Must be 200 acres or more. You can have multiple parcels in the covenant, but there is a new 2019 change where parcels have to have a 100-acre minimum. So I can have 3 100-acre parcels. They don't have to touch. They don't have to be contiguous. They do have to be in the same name. And they have to be in the identical same name. And that's the Georgia Bar Association will really get on to the local tax assessor or the county attorney if they don't title it in however the deed is recorded, that's the name that has to go on the land for tax purposes. So property owners need to be careful. They may have to do some quick claim deeds. Now, existing FLPA parcels that are in covenants now, they're, the first year of the Forest Land Protection Act was 2009 was the first year of covenants. Do the math, 15 years after 2009, this will be the final year of a lot of them, and they'll be renewing this coming year. They're going to have to renew it at least 100 acres. That was a 2019 constitutional change by the voters of Georgia. So you can have multiple parcels, but each parcel has to be at least 100 acres. 100 acres per parcel, at least 200 acres on the application. That's the easy rule of thumb to remember. And if you have several smaller tracts that are contiguous to one another and they're in the same name, you would need to request that your tax assessor combine the parcels prior to renewing or prior to putting them in a new covenant. There is no statutory requirement that a property owner has to bear any expense of surveying 3 tracts of land into one and recording that plat before they can combine them on the tax records. You're going to run into a lot of local zoning laws. It's going to bark at you about it, but the Constitution says if there are at least 100 acres in the parcel, that they can go in. So don't let your tax assessor steer you wrong there. And I'm not being critical of the tax assessors. I just know how some of them take the sharp side of that, and that is not the legislative intent. And again, the parcels can be contiguous, which means they touch one another, or they don't have to be contiguous as long as they have a 100-acre minimum. We have a conservation use value. Again, no structures. All lands categorized as woodland in my prior example. The primary uses is growing trees, timber, wood, or wood fiber products. There are secondary uses, wildlife habitats, carbon sequestration, conservation mitigation, banking, ecosystem products and services. Again, I'm just recapping this for you. Environmentally sensitive property, you have certified wetland, you can have things like that will not disqualify it. And the property may be in some type of sustainable forestry certification program. That is fine. That does not disqualify it. That's not a requirement that it does have to be in a program. As long as the landowner is growing trees, it qualifies. There's a definition in the FLPA, the Forest Land Protection Act, of contiguous. It's where if the property touches one another, irrespective of any natural boundaries, it can be declared contiguous by the property owner. And again, this helps you get that 100-acre minimum if you have several small adjoining tracts. Let's see. At least 1/2 of the tract has to be in timberland and in trees for all of it to qualify. And I'll revert back to my previous example. I got 300 acres, 100 acres of it in pasture, 200 of it's in woodland. That's over 1/2 of it. All 300 acres qualifies for FLPA. Hunting rights, that's fine. That does not disqualify it. If a landowner wants to lease the hunting rights out on their timber property, that does not disqualify it from FLPA. Now, I will say this, hunting lodges, they're starting to get or have become very popular in some properties. That gets into something outside of the regular hunting lease of hunting rights. I would recommend a property owner split out the acreage up under any kind of hunting lodges, cabins, things like that, and split it to a separate parcel and keep it out of the covenant. Therefore, it wouldn't jeopardize it. These covenants carry twice the savings per year of tax savings if it breaches. So I'd be careful with any kind of alternative rent, such as lease, cabins, hunting right, hunting packages when you have lodges. You can have a fish pond on your property. That does not disqualify it from the FLPA. The landowner can charge them $5 a pound. They can charge them $10 a day plus $5 a pound or whatever they want to charge them. That does not disqualify it. And again, you can also bale pine straw and sell it. That does not disqualify it from the FLPA covenant. You can, if you put a piece of property in an FLPA covenant, put a tract in, and you want to sell your property, as long as the buyer agrees to continue the use of the property in timberland and keep at least half of it in trees, they can sign a continuation and it does not breach it. You can sell part of your property. You can sell part of it where either what you retain or what you sell off results in less than 200 acres. That's okay, as long as the use stays in forestry, in timberland. They may not qualify to renew when the covenant's up, but once, they originally qualified as over 200 acres, so that's good to go. You can split off part of it as long as you split off enough or split off some and retain enough for it to be in the, considered as forest land. Now, selling off 1 acre residential site, I don't think you tax assessors are going to like that. And they would probably bark at you a little bit about it. Start mentioning covenant breach. Because again, y'all remember, the purpose of this is really the whole theme behind what you're doing tonight and presenting tonight. The goal of these programs are to keep forestries in forest, not develop them. And that's why there's the tax incentives.
Kenny, you've got about a minute left.
Okay, I'll be quick. That's pretty much kind of what I've said. There's different things to hear about breaches. If you split off part of your property and the new buyer continues it, and then a breach occurs, the breach only occurs on the piece that you sold off. You get to keep your covenant on the piece that you keep, and vice versa. I sell off half of my property and the buyer continues it, and then I do something to breach it. I'm going to pay the breach penalty on the half I kept, not the half that I sold. They get to continue to keep the covenant going. Again, contiguous parcels, and there's just some graphic, some examples there. Filing. Here's the last thing I'll talk about. Filing the applications. You have between January 1st and through the 45th day. Now, each year, a tax assessor will send every property owner a valuation notice on every piece of property they got. You get one every year, whether they change your value or not. And there's a 45-day window to file an appeal. So between January 1st all the way through that 45th day, the window is open to apply for Forest Land Protection Act. You can do it in conjunction with or in lieu of an appeal. If the Board of Assessors deny your FLPA application under 48.5311, you can appeal it to the Board of Equalization. You doesn't get you still think they deny it and you think you should still get it. Continue your appeal on the Superior Court. It only costs you $25, just like any other property tax appeal. Each year, they're going to have to notify you. And like I told you, of each value change each year once you get it. And also, remember this. There's a breach penalty if you break your promise. And it's twice the savings per year of your tax savings. They're going to go back and get all of the tax savings that you've saved and accumulated over the life of your covenant. And then it's going to be times 2. There's a 30-day window to cure and fix the problem. If you're doing some potential breach and you can undo what you did in 30 days, that's fine. Okay. There's several things. And again, there's so much here for 20 minutes, you can't really get through, but pretty much senior citizens can get out with 1 year savings. There's an example of the table of values. There's your best land. And I picked Fayette County. Your highest price land is $963 an acre of your very best soil with the highest site index. The lowest swamp land, sandy land, is $354 an acre. That's the 100% numbers. You do that times 40, and that's your 40% value per acre of land in the Forest Land Protection Act. Thank y'all, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain it. And again, our property tax continuing education classes, they are open to the public in addition to the tax assessors. Any forest land owner, any taxpayer, any citizen can come to our classes.
Great. Thank you, Kenny. And just a reminder to folks, we'll be taking questions throughout the whole presentation this evening and then asking them at the end of all of our presenters.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kenny, I definitely learned something. There's a couple of things that are different between the North Carolina present use value and what you've got going on in Georgia. So it's interesting to hear about that. I think next we'll be hearing from Alexandra Ford. Alexandra, if you would like to start sharing your screen, that'd be great. And we're going to hear about the importance of keeping forests as forests and the Georgia Forest Legacy Program.
Good evening, I guess. I am Alexandra Ford with the Georgia Forestry Commission, and see if I can get this PowerPoint up and going. But I'm with the Georgia Forestry Commission. I'm based out of the Albany, Georgia area, but I'm a stewardship specialist, kind of focusing on our legacy program. So I cover basically anywhere south of the I-20 interstates. interstate on both sides. So it's quite a big area, but I started off as a county forester in the McRae area, Dublin area, and moved my way down here to Albany. But I'm trying to get this to work, but it doesn't want to. So I'll just go through easy. So just some Georgia forestry facts real quick. Can y'all see these slides?
Yeah, we see you're in like the PowerPoint application.
It is not letting me do the
Are you on two or
Okay.
one screen? Oh, there we go. I see it
Got
now. Perfect.
Okay, so just quickly some forest facts for Georgia. We've got nearly 25 million acres of forest land, which 92% of it is privately owned, which is vastly different from out west, where generally it's like 40% private ownership. We are currently growing 56% more wood than what's being harvested annually. So we generally say for every one tree we cut, we plant 3 afterwards. And the forest industry is the second largest in the state. It injects almost 29 billion into the economy, supports 145,000 jobs and 8.5 billion in wages, and provides an average of 778 million in tax revenues annually. Just some quick details on Georgia Forestry Commission. It was established in 1949 with the overall vision of healthy, sustainable forests, providing clean air and clean water and abundant products for the future generations, and providing leadership and service and education in the protection and conservation of Georgia's forest resources. Some of the services that we provide to landowners are forest fire protection and prevention. So those are going to be our county rangers, and they'll put in fire breaks, and then also kind of help with any wildfires that get out, along with helping with prescribed burning in general. We every county has a forester. I think one of our forester usually covers anywhere from like 3 to 5 counties. And so we can help you with stewardship plans, cost share programs, just general advice, looking out at trees if you see some things dying or have any questions like that. We also have a sustainable community forest program. We have a nursery, so we do reforestation and then forest utilization as well. Here's just some examples of our forest fire protection and prevention that we do. This is a wildfire on the left, and then they're putting in a fire break down in southeast Georgia in the middle, and then that's just a backing burn on the right picture. Some forest fire protection and prevention. We've got FireWise communities and practice guidance, fire equipment leasing through the Rural Fire Defense Program, emergency management support during disaster events, so kind of like those wildfires in northwest Georgia that had been going on, weather forecasting, and we also do our online burn permit systems now. For our foresters, some of our forest management general stuff that we do is we advise and make plans for reforestation, timber stand improvement and harvesting, multi-use forest stewardship management plans, which are free to the landowner. You contact your local forester and they'll write a management plan for 10 years for your property. So letting you know just an overall description of your timber stands, when to burn, when to thin, when to clear cut, when to plant, when to burn, and when to do herbicide and things like that per each stand. We also have forest health information, so any sort of invasive species, bug infestations, curious as to why your trees are all of a sudden dying. Our foresters help with that as well. We do water quality and wetland complaint investigation, which is kind of common down here in the wetland areas, and then also up there in the mountains of North Georgia. We do the forestry best management practices, which we call BMPs, monitoring and education. And then our most active thing that our foresters do is help with the cost share programs within NRCS, FSA, and of course GFC. We have some of our own cost share programs. This is just an example of some of the stuff that our forest health program will help with: beetle infestation, Japanese climbing fern, and then Kogan grass. And then water quality, which our foresters will work closely with the landowners to ensure the protections are in place to protect the water resources. So making sure that if you are doing some timber operations, that you've got the correct creek crossings or stream crossings, and that you're leaving enough vegetation on that slope and river bank or creek bank to provide shade for the water and to help with allowing any sort of sand or any sort of disturbances get in those water and dilute the waters. Our website also has some other information on the carbon sequestration registry and offset, some biomass, championship trees, wildfire viewer, careers, and then directories for consulting foresters in your area, timber buyers, arborists, forest service contractors, and pine raking. One program that we've been working on the last couple of years, we're calling it the Conservation Woodland Program. And it's basically to help landowners that have less than 20 acres on how to properly manage their land for what their objectives are. So it's basically kind of a catch-all web page to give you information on anything from timber management to invasive species, tree ID, managing for wildlife, pollinators, creating your own backyard garden, aesthetics, wildfire prevention, not wildlife prevention, wildfire prevention, CUVA, and then it creates a management plan. So our idea to use this for CUVA is you actually can make your own management plan within this website. You can make your own map, do your acreage, and kind of pick all of those objectives that you want to do on that property, put it into a management plan, and take it to your local tax assessor office and use that for your application for CUVA. This is kind of what happens when you pull up that web page. You pick out where your property is, and it shows you what your soil types are, if you could possibly have any threatened or endangered species on there. It gives you all of your county contacts for your Natural Resource Conservation Service, your Farm Service Agency, DNR, and GFC. And then it also helps you can make your own map like this one, and then it creates your own management plan that you could then supposed to be able to create and take to your tax assessor office to help with your CUVA application. So this is the main two things that I do within GFC now, is our conservation easements and then our forest legacy program. So the conservation easements provide landowners with a legal means of protecting their properties, conservation values, while maintaining ownership, retaining certain uses of their land, and earning significant tax benefits. So this map is a couple years old, I think, but this is supposed to be outlining all of the easements that are held in Georgia. And there's about 50 organizations in Georgia that are qualified to hold conservation easements. And unlike a more common temporary conservation use covenant that can be renewed every 10 years, this is in perpetuity, excuse me. Properties encumbered by conservation easements can be sold or transferred, but the easement restrictions and the easement holder's obligations are upheld to the next person and will never expire. GFC, we hold 30 conservation easements, and we're constantly adding more. I think we actually just got another one, or we're working on another one that's not on here. So we're right around 47,000 acres. And it's a 6 to 12-month process for the landowner and us to create a conservation easement and get it closed. GFC needs approval from our board and the governor to create the easement. Our job is to create the baseline and stewardship plan. We also assist in the deed language with the landowner and their attorneys and our attorneys. And then every year I have to go to each conservation easement property and monitor it. And so we do an on-site visit, and in that baseline document, we create a bunch of photo points. And every year I have to go back to those exact points and take 4 pictures at every single point. We talk to the landowner constantly. They'll call us with questions of what they can and cannot do, or let us know that they're going to do a timber harvest, or we've been getting a lot of calls recently because Verizon's wanting to put cell towers everywhere, and they seem to reach out to all of our easement owners. So basically our job is to just kind of know that easement language backwards and forwards. So when they do call, we can say yes or no, or, you know, there's a limit to how many acres you can clear cut this year. So things like that. So lots, I'm in Southwest Georgia, so there's lots of, can I dig a pond for a fishing hole? Or one landowner asked if they could put a golf course on there, if they could put solar panels. So it's a variety of questions and obviously restrictions that these properties have, but it's all for the long term. Just it's the whole goal for our easements and the ones that we hold and that we plan to hold later is to keep them as working forests. We're just trying to prevent it from being subdivided or developed. We want you actively managing. We want clear cuts. We want replanting. We want thinning. We want burning. We want herbicide applications. So our focus really is just continuing that active forest management with these properties. And the other thing I work with is the Forest Legacy Program. It's a program administered by the U.S. Forest Service in partnership with state agencies to encourage the protection of privately owned forest lands through conservation easements or land purchases. Since it was created in 1990, it's conserved over 2.8 million acres of forest land across the country in 53 states and territories. So our role, I'll show you this next map. Our role with GFC is we've got two forest legacy easements that are still privately held, and the rest are all turned into public land, WMA. So our job as Georgia Forestry Commission is we're the state entity that does the proposal and meets with the Forest Service. And then we hand over usually that property. We don't hand it over, we do all of the due diligence and paperwork and things like that. And then DNR, Department of Natural Resources, are the ones that end up usually holding the property. And they're the ones that they create WMAs, and they've got the manpower to manage these places and to provide hunting opportunities and fishing opportunities and all that for the public in Georgia. We still actually annually monitor those as well, but just not as stringent. I don't have to go to every single property every single year and take multiple pictures. It's just a couple properties every few years. The Tarver Plantation one, that is privately held, and then the Pine Mountain one is privately held. But all these other the other 12 properties are all WMAs. So these are all public land for anybody that wants to hunt, fish, bird watch, sightsee, run, camp. These are all properties purchased with federal funds to be public land and WMAs. With that, right now we've got the Inflation Reduction Act. We've got the regular Forest Legacy Program proposal process, which is completed for this fiscal year. But we've got the Inflation Reduction Act, which provided an additional $700 million for some legacy properties. And there's 3 categories for that. One is the large landscape scale property. That is up to $50 million worth. And then there's some tribal properties and then small strategic lands. So we currently have 2 proposals for the small strategic lands in Georgia. So that would be another public WMA access area as well. But our most recent forest legacy projects that we have sent in to the Forest Service was a dug down corridor 1 and 2. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this is kind of in closer to y'all's neck of the woods than it is mine. But it's these 3 red tracks right here that we are trying to acquire from the Nature Conservancy or the Conservation Fund. I can't remember which one it is, but to turn these properties into WMAs and connecting that corridor along the Tallapoosa River and giving more access to public land surrounding Atlanta. So phase 1 and phase 2 is a little over 12,000 acres, protecting rare plants, bats, aquatic species associated with the Tallapoosa River. It contains 34 miles of streams and rivers and preventing its fragmentation or conversion that will help maintain water quality and wildlife in the community. So this is going to be an area that we're going to continually be applying for more and more money to buy more and more land in this area. Again, we've got a proposal in that same area for the small strategic land proposal, and then the large landscape proposal will be somewhere around this area as well. So you can kind of see all of these outlined tracks are some sort of either forest legacy completed project or proposed project, which is pretty kind of incredible. So we're slowly trying to make Georgia a little bit more accessible to the public with these easements and legacy programs and projects. But that's all I have. Again, I'm Alexandra Ford with Georgia Forestry Commission, and I'm down here in Southwest Georgia.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexandra. For any questions for her, feel free to put them into the chat and we can ask them at the end. Up next, we're going to be hearing from Josh Fain with LandYield, talking about connecting family forests to carbon markets. So Josh, whenever you're ready to get your screen shared, we are ready for you.
Great. Hey, everybody. Nice to sort of see everyone. I'm going to be talking about a new opportunity that's available to landowners throughout the Southeast, but in Georgia as well, to connect with revenue from the carbon markets. Our company's name is LandYield. We launched in August, and I will go into some detail about the company here and our offering. I'm going to run through things fairly quickly since time is kind of limited. But I'm going to try to hit on who we are and the technology and stuff that we're using to make carbon markets available to smaller ownerships than has been previously possible. And then I'm going to run through some of the requirements and eligibility for the program. And then if I have time, I'll show you guys our platform, our web-based platform that you can use to enroll your forests in a carbon project. So, like I said, LandYield is a new opportunity. For a long time, landowners have been hearing a lot about carbon markets and about carbon revenue, but it's been pretty elusive. And really, it's been mostly the TIMOs and industrial ownerships that have been able to take advantage of it, as like project development costs were really high. You had to do a really in-depth inventory and get very precise data on your forest. And then there's a lot of modeling that goes into building sort of the baselines and calculating carbon additionality. So all that meant that smaller parcels of, less than a few thousand acres were really not economically viable to enter the carbon market. But we and the folks at Finite, our partners at Finite Carbon, have been working on this problem for several years now. And we worked with ACR to come up with a methodology that is specifically designed for forest owners with between 40 and 5,000 acres. And this methodology allows us to use a really streamlined approach to developing the projects that I'll go into, but it really is I'm really happy that this has finally come to market and come to fruition, and that landowners of this size can finally sort of get paid for carbon sequestration. The company LandYield was established by carbon and forestry experts, myself and others who have been working in the carbon market for a long time. I have a background in forestry, undergrad degree from the University of Georgia, actually, and a master's from Yale School of Forestry. And we have a lot of expertise in our team, people who used to work at ACR and have worked in timber and carbon finance for a long time. Again, everything about our program is designed for small landowners and with them in mind. And so we have a really streamlined process for enrolling that doesn't cost landowners anything to enroll. We aggregate small tracts into large scale projects so that we can take advantage of that scaling. And then we use this new ACR methodology, and ACR is the American Carbon Registry for anybody who's not familiar with that. So we use this new methodology to issue high integrity credits These are not sort of self-issued carbon credits that have been out there before. All of our credits are third-party audited and certified through the American Carbon Registry. So they're the type of high-integrity credits that Fortune 500 companies are looking for increasingly now that a lot of projects have sort of fallen by the wayside that were not as high integrity. So the way we do this is through exclusive use of Finite Carbon's core carbon technology. And this is an online platform that allows landowners to go on, create a profile, identify their parcels, and really manage their project through this online platform. They can get an instant revenue estimate that you can sort of see illustrated there. As soon as you identify your parcel, we have a data layer that covers the entire Southeast. And it's a combination of high-res satellite imagery and Forest Service forest inventory analysis plots that we correlate to get really good data on every acre of forest that's out there. So because of that, we can give you an instant estimate on how much revenue you could make in a forest carbon project. These are our partners. This is a really strong partnership. We're working with Mercuria, which is supporting LandYield financially and helping us transact the carbon credits. They're one of the largest commodity traders in the world, very sophisticated outfit that is making sure our landowners get top dollar for the carbon credits they produce. Again, we're working with Finite Carbon, who's one of the oldest and largest carbon developers in North America, and then working with the American Carbon Registry to make sure that our credits are all thoroughly vetted and high integrity. And then we're working with some, like I said, some of the largest corporations in the world who are buying these kind of credits. And so all around a very strong partnership that's built for the long term. We really intend to stick around. So to go into the methodology a little bit and what's required to get paid for carbon sequestration. Again, we use this methodology that's specifically designed for smaller landowners. And we manage all project development, monitoring, verification, everything associated with developing a carbon project we manage for the landowners at no cost to them. And then again, we do produce these high integrity verified credits. The way it works is it's a 40-year agreement. It's a 20-year harvest deferral with a 20-year monitoring period. So again, 40 years total. 20 years of harvest deferral, 20 years of monitoring. And I'll go into what that means here in a second. But what this graph just illustrates in a nutshell is how additionality is calculated and how we can sell tons of carbon from your forest. Basically, we look at the data from your forest and we put it through a growth and yield model, and we use specified discount rates to see how that timber would be managed under sort of maxing net present value. And so you can kind of see that illustrated in this dotted green line, which would be a baseline. And that would more or less be business as usual and say, okay, here's the timber you have, here's the market, what the market looks like locally, and here's how you would harvest if you were sort of maxing that economic value and what the carbon flow would look like. And then we compare that to a scenario where you're agreeing to conserve your forest and commit to no commercial harvesting for this 40-year period. And the difference there you can see is the orange, and that's what we can sell to companies to help offset their carbon emissions. This slide's just, again, kind of explaining how these two time periods work. Basically, you're committing to deferring harvest, like I said, for 20 years. And then at the end of that 20 years, we'll be selling the credits every year as we go through that 20-year period. And then from year 21 to 40, you have to commit to maintaining that carbon because we're basically paying you to store that carbon. So you have to commit to maintaining it through the end of the project. Now, in the second 20-year period, you can harvest growth that's above and beyond where you were at year 20. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you had 100 tons an acre on your property, and over the 20-year period, it grows to be 150 tons. We would sell as much carbon as we could during that time, and then you would need to commit to maintaining that 150 tons an acre for that second 20-year period. Now, any volume above and beyond that, you can start to harvest in that second year period. You can also continue any sort of non-timber forest product income you have, like raking pine straw, hunting leases, camping leases, sort of anything like that that's not affecting the timber stocking is fine and allowed under this program. Eligibility requirements are pretty straightforward. It's just that you have clear title and ownership of the land, and that you haven't already sold the carbon to somebody else. You have to have 40 acres at a minimum and 5,000 acres at a maximum. And that just has to do with this being designed for non-industrial ownerships and the way we measure and gather data. And then you can't have any existing bans on commercial harvesting. So this is important for a forest stewards crowd, I think, is easements are fine. Conservation easements can work as long as they don't severely restrict the harvesting. Most easements I've seen in Georgia do not restrict timber harvesting. They may have some language about maintaining wildlife habitat and whatnot, but as long as you are harvesting with using BMPs and using a management plan, it's usually permitted under most conservation easements I've seen. So we can work with those. There might be we might have to discount the carbon a little bit because maybe you wouldn't harvest as aggressively, but those don't preclude properties from participating in a carbon project. And then something I haven't hit on that I think is really great about this program is you don't have to enroll all your lands. In the past, if you enrolled in a carbon project, you were required to put your entire ownership into the project. And with our program, you can select parcels. You can put some of your parcels in and some you can leave out, or you can even put certain stands into the project within a parcel and leave other stands out, which a lot of our clients to date have found that to be really useful if they have certain forest land that they want to manage a certain way and other lands they want to manage a different way. Our program can allow for that. The only thing is there are some qualifications around the way you harvest on non-project lands. It's got to be overseen by a qualified forestry professional. It's got to follow BMPs and or be under a certification program. And that's just to ensure that you're not going to enroll half your forest and then harvest the other half twice as hard as you might otherwise. The carbon gains would sort of be lost there. So I think I've covered some of the rest of this. Allowable activities, there are several allowed activities. I think this slide covers it a little better, but forest health treatments are allowed with a forester's sort of signing off on them. So you can treat pests, disease, fire, salvage harvesting after fire is allowed. Landowners can collect up to 5 cords of firewood a year. That's allowed. A one-time clearing during the project period of 5 acres or 2% of the project area is allowed. And then carbon projects can be transferred to new ownerships. So selling the property during the project period is also possible. There was one thing this jogged my memory on that I get asked about a lot that I was going to say, and now it's slipping my mind a little bit, but maybe it'll come back to me. Again, to go over the economics for landowners real quickly, and just Dakota, just let me know when I'm about to run out of time. We offer quarterly payments that start immediately after enrollment, so we don't make landowners wait until we have all the credits pooled and verified and certified, which can take some time. So if you enroll your property today, you could expect to get paid in Q1 of 2024, which I think is a really nice feature. Landowners just have to log on and attest that they have followed the requirements of the program every quarter, and then they receive their quarterly payment that's based, well, I'll get to that in the next slide, actually. But here you can see those two 20-year periods again being broken down and explained a little more. We do guarantee landowners a price for the first 3 years of $11 a ton, which is a very competitive rate if you compare it to some other programs out there. Then in year 4 through 20, which is the end of the crediting period, we offer landowners 55% of the fair market value of the offsets. And so we provide landowners with a statement every quarter saying what the fair market value is at that point, and then giving them their revenue share. We use our revenue share to cover our expenses and to cover the cost of having these projects certified. Most landowners in the South that we're seeing right now can get $27 to $45 an acre a year. And that's at that $11 a ton price, which actually is about 55% of the fair market value of the price now. Most reports that we're seeing are predicting the market to continue to grow, the voluntary carbon market, and the price of carbon to continue to grow up. So landowners will be able to experience that upside in our program. Obligations, I've already hit on. We make quarterly payments. We do all the program management as I said. The landowners just have to make timely reports to us and follow the restrictions that are part of the program. Another thing is timely reporting on any natural disasters, which landowners are not responsible for carbon lost through natural disasters. That's covered by a risk buffer pool that we put credits into off the top. So every time we issue credits, we're required to set a certain amount of them aside, and that acts as a insurance pool to cover any sort of natural disasters. That, I think, is what I was going to say, because I get asked about that a lot with landowners. So that's it. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward proposal for landowners, and we've also tried to make the enrollment process as easy as possible with CORE. There's still several steps involved, but basically you go on to CORE platform, you create your profile, and it guides you through the process of selecting your parcels. You get your revenue estimate, you submit and say, yes, I would like to do this. And you have to upload the deeds, sort of proving ownership of those parcels. And then we'll send you a contract to review at your leisure and let us know if it sounds good to you and you want to sign up. And that's pretty much it. It's for as far as carbon goes, it's fairly straightforward. I should specify that these are voluntary projects that we're putting together. So it's willing buyer, willing seller. It's not a government regulated program. The companies that are buying the emissions credits from us are doing so of their own fruition and because they want to offset some of their carbon emissions. So is that my time, Dakota, or do I have any left?
Yeah, you are perfectly on time, right? If you end right now.
Great. Well, here's my contact info on the screen. If anybody is interested and wants to learn more, they can go to our website, which has a lot of good information on it, or they can contact me.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, we'll have time at the end for questions. Up next, we're going to be learning a little bit about conservation easements with the Athens Land Trust. And I believe Justin is going to be the one sharing his screen and giving the presentation.
Yeah, thanks. Let's see. So everything looking good on y'all's end? There we go.
Yes, yep, looks great.
All right, so couple of presenters have already touched on conservation easements, but we're going to do kind of a deep dive into it. I'm not going to get upset that they're stealing my thunder, but here we go. So Athens Land Trust is a conservation land trust in Athens, Georgia, although we operate statewide. Our conservation program currently stewards about 21,000 acres, give or take. We're in 42 counties in Georgia and 10 watersheds in Georgia. And this is just sort of some picture examples of some of the projects that we currently have, some wetlands, forests, hardwoods, managed timber, some farms. These are the counties that we currently are active in. I apologize, my dog just decided to start loudly drinking water next to me as soon as I started talking. These are the counties that we are currently active in. Like I mentioned, 42 counties in Georgia. About 80% of our conservation easements are up here in this Northeast Georgia, Clark, Oconee, Morgan, Walton, Newton, kind of this area of the world. But we do get to all four corners of the state. So a little bit about a conservation easement and what is a conservation easement. It is a legal agreement between a landowner and a conservation entity or a land trust that permanently limits the use of the land in order to protect the natural resources of the property. The landowner themselves continue to own and manage the property just as they did before the easement was applied. The CE must provide benefits for open space and natural resource protection. The CE is tailored to the particular property and to the goals of the landowner. So if you are a managed timber forestry property, we'll tailor the CE to match to those needs. If you're a farmer, you're going to have a completely different set of needs and we'll match those. If you have just a lovely stand of hardwoods that you like to hunt and that's all you want to do out there, we'll meet those needs as well. The rights retained by the landowner and the restrictions on the land are spelled out in the conservation easement, and that easement gets attached to the property deed. That will follow the deed in perpetuity so that the CE is binding for all future landowners. If you sell the property, if you leave it to your kids, if you pass away without a will and it just goes to, up for auction on the courthouse steps, the CE is still attached to it. So you can kind of ensure that the things that you want binding in that conservation easement follow it forever. The land trust holds the conservation easement and has a responsibility to monitor the easement in perpetuity. So in 200 years, when everybody on this call is dead and gone, somebody with Athens Land Trust is still going to be responsible for monitoring the 21,000 acres that we currently have an easement on. And if Athens Land Trust no longer exists, then we have an obligation to find another land trust or another conservation entity that will take those holdings and continue to monitor them. So how does a conservation easement work? This is a little graphic that we've used. We call it our bundle of sticks graphic. So if you think of your land as not just the place that you live and not just the place that you work, but if you think of the land as a whole bunch of rights, and each one of those rights can kind of correspond to a stick in a bundle. So in our little graphic here, the gray stick there is ownership of the property, and then each subsequent green stick is a different right. So you think the right to recreation on the property, the right to cut your timber, the right to build a house, the right to quarry and mine, the right to sell to Walmart and develop into a strip mall or a parking lot. Each one of those rights is one stick in the bundle. Now, when we do this conservation easement, this legal deed right here, you are transferring some of those sticks, some of those rights to Athens Land Trust to have and to hold and to make sure that they are never exercised. So after the conservation easement deed is applied, you still have the ownership right, you still have your house out there, you still have the right to timber your forest for commercial gain, but you've given up the right to develop as a strip mall. You've given up the right to quarry. You've given up the right to put in a pond or alter the flow of water on your property. We are going to hold on to those rights forever. We have them now, and nobody else will ever get to exercise them. And there is a value associated with this. If you think of the fair market value of your property right now, the highest and best use, once you've given up all those rights, each of those rights has a dollar amount attached to it. And a certified appraiser who's knowledgeable of conservation easements can determine what that value is. And we call that the conservation easement value. That's the value that you have given up and given over to Athens Land Trust or another conservation land trust. It's typically about 30 to 80% of the fair market value, but we usually see about 70% reduction. And because of that reduction in value, because you've given it up to Athens Land Trust, if it's a donation and not a sale of those rights, there are tax benefits that can be gained from that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, so the easement value is just the rights that are given up here. So why would you protect your land with a CE? There's general conservation and general preservation of your property. A lot of the landowners that we work with have had their land for, their entire lives. They grew up on this property. I was out with a landowner just on Tuesday who had a tax receipt for his great-great-grandfather for the farm or the tree stand that he was still working today, and the tax receipt was from 1847. And so that is many generations of land. And this fella, David Green, loved his property and loved to talk about his property and was so happy that he was able to protect his property well beyond his lifetime with a conservation easement. There are programs that will purchase conservation easements. There are mostly at the federal level, although there are some grants that will support conservation easements as well. There's also hopefully coming through USDA NRCS, the FSEP program, Forest Conservation Easement Program, sort of a continuation of the HFRP program that doesn't exist anymore. That we are lobbying pretty hard at the federal level to put FSEP into the next farm bill, so keep an eye out for that, hopefully. And there are a number of tax benefits that a landowner can take advantage of by putting their land in conservation. There is a federal tax deduction, and there is also a state tax credit. Each one sort of has different goals and different requirements to what is being protected, and those are just spelled out here a little bit. There are also some property tax and estate tax incentives as well. And there is potential increased value to neighboring properties. And the most important part that a lot of people ask about is the grantor of the conservation easement still retains use and ownership of their land, so they can take advantage of all of these tax benefits or monetizations while still owning their property and still working their property exactly as they were before the easement was applied. The reserved rights that we typically see on properties can vary. As I talked about, we try to tailor each one to the landowner's future needs. But potentially building envelopes for future residences. If you have a house and you think your kids might each want a house out there, we can build in the right to build a couple more houses. The right to agriculture, including infrastructure, the right to timber management, the right to recreation or public recreation. A lot of people have it in their mind that if you have a conservation easement on your property, it's automatically open to the public, and that is not the case. You can allow public recreation or public access, or you never have to exercise that right, or you can disallow it. Kind of the options are on the table. There's also reserved rights for trails, roads, driveways. If you have a pond, the right to build a dock out there, or any infrastructure that supports that. These conservation easements are difficult to nearly impossible to change or edit once they have been recorded. And so we always have to think about all of these different rights that you potentially want to retain on the front end. We can work the conservation easement document to meet your needs as long as it hasn't been recorded yet. If it's been recorded and you're like, oh no, I forgot that I want to, I need a house, a third house down there, we can't change it at that point. So this is a lot of thought goes into these on the front end. And I want to talk about 3 different conservation easement projects that we have done that I think are going to be relevant to this group. These are all 3 projects that are based around forests, and they all kind of approach it from 3 different viewpoints or 3 different ownerships. So the first one is our Bramble Creek property. This is 147 acres in Morgan County. It is a single landowner donated conservation easement. It is basically the bog standard conservation easement that we kind of work with around here. The landowner lives in the little cutout on the north side there. So as we were drafting this conservation easement, she has a house there. There's also another property that she rents out up there. And she decided that because those were already on a separate tax parcel, she wanted to cut those out of the easement so there wouldn't be restrictions on them. And that was fine. She reserved the right to maintenance and utilities to get from the road to her building envelope there. She reserved the right to recreation. This property is hunted. She reserved the right to agriculture. You can see on the parcel nearest the road on the southwest side, there is an open field. So the right to agriculture is in there. And in fact, the right is also retained to subdivide out that southwest parcel to sell it to a new farmer. Morgan County, if anybody knows, the Rivian plant is going in nearby here. There's big concerns about the agrarian lifestyle of the county disappearing. And so, you know, the owner of this one, Ms. Kickbush, is no longer working that farm, but we want to keep it in farming. So we negotiated the right to subdivide and sell that off to a new farmer. She also has managed forest. This is the property on the northeastern side of this is a mix of hardwood and managed forest. And so she has the right to continue to manage the managed timber and no right to cut down or manage the hardwoods in any way. She's also retained the right to new trails, vegetation management, and motorized vehicles throughout the property. And so put into practice, this is what that looks like. This is the map that we created for this conservation easement. And I chose this one specifically because it has a little bit of everything. It has the agricultural envelope down on the south side. There's also some forest in there that she retained the right to silvopasture, just to let livestock graze throughout the trees there, which, you know, is better for the livestock because it cuts down on sun and heat. It is keeping the understory cleaned out. It's a really great concept. So there's also the right to a new 1 acre building envelope in that farm area when it's subdivided out to allow the new owner to build a house down there. In the forestry section, there is a blue line stream that flows through. So we have the driveway with the stream crossing. There's extra protections around 200 feet of the riparian area. And then the mix of natural forest and managed timber forest that is spelled out here. So the areas that are designated as managed, she is allowed to continue to manage. And just to overlay that on the satellite, this is what that all looks like in practice here. And I just want to show one real quick thing. If you look on the southeastern side there, there's an open field there. This is 2021 imagery, and that open field has already been developed by 2023. So Morgan County is developing quickly. The benefits that Ms. Kickbush was able to take advantage of from this property, there's the federal tax deduction eligibility and the state tax credit eligibility, as I mentioned. The subdivision of the farming portion supports agricultural economy of the county, and the landowner secures her legacy forever. It was really lovely to meet her for the first time. She talked about her and her late husband's history on the property and how this was her little slice of heaven, as she put it, and she is able to keep this as it is and as the way she wants to see it forever. And it was really great to get to be a part of that. Switching gears a little bit, this is our 5 acre woods property. This is here in Athens, and as the name implies, it is 5 acres of woods in the middle of the city. So you can see there, this is a drone footage of this, 5-acre woods next to Williams Farm, which is actually owned and operated by Athens Land Trust. It's a 5-acre farm here in the city. Across the street is Athens Land Trust also is involved in affordable housing construction and homeownership through the community land trust model. So we have a parcel across the street for that. This is about 1.5 miles from downtown Athens, and the entrance to it is right between a Dollar General and a AutoZone. So it's just a little slice of 5 acres of woods and walking trails that the neighborhood is able to take advantage of here in the middle of the city. And so this one is a partnership between the neighborhood association, essentially the HOA for the neighborhood, as well as the ACC government, the Athens Clarke County government, and UGA, and Athens Land Trust holding the conservation easement. The rights on this one are pretty restrictive. There is the removal of non-native vegetation. There is the right to create and maintain trails for pedestrian access, and there's the right to minor recreational structures, signs, gazebos, picnic tables, that sort of thing. This one was really designed to be able to have green space protection and forest access for the neighborhood and not much else. But it is a great way to support and keep forests as forest while, sorry, my dog is whining, I apologize. While being able to secure future use for the neighborhood and prevent development from going unchecked. As part of this, the neighborhood association put together a site history, inventory and analysis. They did some trail mapping and spelled out how the property was going to be used. So this one is one that we're really proud of. It's actually owned by ACC government now, and it's part of the Athens Clarke County Green Space Program. So they, after the easement was placed, after the HOA worked with us, it was donated to the city to continue to manage and maintain. The last one I want to talk about here is just a partnership that we have with the city of Madison in Morgan County. We hold, this is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 conservation easement parcels currently with the city of Madison, with another 2 or 3 that are in the hopper that we're working on right now. Madison is trying to get ahead of their unchecked development and being able to set aside forestry parcels now for a comprehensive green space program and trail network. And so if there's anybody on the call who is active in local or municipal government, this can be a great opportunity to be able to develop smartly and intentionally and protect your forests in perpetuity. So currently 6 CEs, it's 7 parcels across 6 conservation easements. 2 more pending in downtown Madison. The biggest one is 19 acres. The smallest one is 1.4 acres. I should let you know, Athens Land Trust will take on acreage of all sizes for conservation easements. Our largest is about 2,400 acres, and our smallest is 0.5 acre. If there is conservation value to protect, we are willing to work with you to protect it. The reserved rights highlights for these Morgan County City of Madison properties. There's low impact, natural resource based, non-commercial recreation use, hiking, picnicking, bike riding, those sorts of things. There's environmental and nature education activities. They can put in minor recreational structures, like I was talking about, gazebos and picnic tables. There is a future green cemetery here. There's a current traditional cemetery with that kind of splits 2 of these parcels right up here. But the one directly to the west is planned for a future green cemetery. So there's access and walking trails from the 2 parcels adjacent to the cemetery to kind of get around. There are also trails, bridges, boardwalks, electric vehicles no wider than 4 feet and that travel no faster than 15 miles per hour. Those are typically used just for maintenance of the property. And because this is the city and we recognize that infrastructure is required, they do have the right to construct a pond for stormwater management. And the real kicker for this is that City of Madison is involved in a TDR program, a transferable development right. and actually I have the number wrong. It was 11 TDRs for one of these conservation easements, but the way the TDRs work is the city works with private developers to incentivize conservation easements and thoughtful development and conservation by using this TDR program and saying essentially, if this developer places an easement on one area and protects it in perpetuity, they are allowed to then develop another area in a way that is more dense than the typical regulations would restrict to. So it's a way to incentivize thoughtful development, and kind of help Morgan or City of Madison be a walkable city and be a not lose the character of the city. And we have long been a supporter of it, and we have long been working to assist in their TDR program. And the two more that we're working on right now are also TDR projects. This is just the conservation easement for one of the map for one of those properties. This is the Tanyard Branch one. Directly below in this image, the map there is the cemetery I talked about. And so they have the right to trails, they have the right to the stream crossings, they have the right to the stormwater management area, and that has been put in place since the easement was closed. And otherwise, it's just a green space that the public can take advantage of, and it's another way to keep forests as forests. This is just some more information about how the transferable development right program works, and how these things don't happen in a bubble. The City of Madison has worked and put up money to do this. The Madison Morgan Conservancy, which is a local nonprofit, has worked to put up support and funding. Riverview Foundation is a funder out of North Carolina who has worked with us and the city to make this program happen, as well as the Downtown Development Authority of Madison. So everybody recognizes that Madison is the way it is because it is intentional, and will work and put funding forth to keep it that way. And we are happy and proud to be a part of that. And with that, that is everything that I had on conservation easements and how they can use to support forestry. And I would be happy to take any questions as well.
Great. Thank you, Justin. That was a really great presentation. I really like the bundle of sticks analogy. That laid it out very nicely. So we have a couple of minutes for questions. If folks have any questions of any of our speakers tonight, please feel free to either type them into the chat box, or if you would rather actually just go ahead and unmute yourself, because we are a smaller group, I'd like to invite that as well. And I think I did have one other announcement I wanted to say. Eric Wickstrom with Graphic Packaging International is one of the sponsors for tonight, and he wanted to just say hello and thank you to everyone for showing up. He did have to hop off a little bit early, unfortunately, but he just wanted to say thank you and hello. Let's see here. All right, so any questions for any of our speakers? Right, and if not, I do want to say thanks again to all of our speakers this evening. Thanks for working with us, working with Sean on putting this event together. We'll definitely have the recording saved, and we'll send it out to everyone that registered. I know not everyone was able to make it tonight that registered and wanted to get the information. So we'll send that along with a couple other materials. And then if y'all are willing to include your contact information, I'd love to send that to folks as well.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
Great.
And Alexandra, I'm going to be reaching out to you because during your talk, I had a number of questions and a number of things I wanted to pick your brain about too. We're looking to be more active in South Georgia with one of our projects right now. And I think you touched on a lot of things that I've been thinking about.
Okay. Hopefully that was good that you want to reach out. I don't know.
No, very good. Very
Okay.
good. Very good.
Awesome.
I'll be glad to help out with any difficulties anyone has with some of the assessors across the state too. And that's a common thing sometimes with these programs.
Kenny, I will say that we have had issues with assessors across the state who don't view conservation easements the same way that they do CUVA, and will often not lower property values for our landowners who have placed an easement. So
Yeah, they tend to be stubborn sometimes, and and it's amazing the parallel. And I know it's late, so I'll be very brief. It's amazing that the little sticks, the bundle of sticks, on our appraisal stuff, teaching the fair market value, we talk about the bundle of rights. And I have stood up in front of a classroom before and held my arm out like I was holding an armload of firewood. And I said, look, this is all the bundles of rights of my property. I can sell it, I can develop it, I can do whatever I want with it, I can fish on it, I can hunt on it. It's all of my development rights. But as I start giving away and I'm showing, I'm illustrating, I'm taking sticks out of my arms and throw them down. I said, as I lose my pile of sticks, I'm losing value. So, I mean, we teach it to them pretty hard, but yeah. Can't always guarantee results, but be glad to
as you
try.
say, now I know who to send landowners to.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay,
Enjoy.
thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks again. Have a
See
great
ya.
rest of your evening and a good weekend coming up.
Yes.